Hey, welcome to Hardcore Mixing. Today we're going to create larger-than-life screamed vocals by stacking several compressors and even reverbs and delays in series to create sounds that we couldn't achieve with just one instance of each. Let's jump right in. We'll start with the finished product.
So miserable it hurts. It's too much. Life is up to the touch. I shake and I wake, sleep and repeat. I'm so stuck.
All right, that sounded like some hardcore rock and roll music. Now let's dial back here and I'll show you what that same part sounds like with no mix compression.
So miserable it hurts. It's too much. Life is up to the touch. I shake and I wake, sleep and repeat. I'm so stuck.
That was kind of boring. I was not into that. I'm going to break down for you exactly how I got from that back to this.
So miserable it hurts. It's too much. Life is up to the touch.
First things first, when I track vocals, I am going through a De-Esser. Now that is an outboard compressor, but within Reaper, you do not need to spend a gajillion dollars on an outboard compressor to get in the ballpark of where my vocal tracks are starting, because the settings that I use on the De-Esser are almost identical to the modern vocal preset right here in Recomp. So theoretically, if you don't have an outboard compressor to track your vocals through, throw this compressor on this preset at the start of your vocal chain, and you're pretty much good to go. And I'm just going to leave that there as a visual reference for you, but I'm going to have it disengaged because, as I mentioned, I tracked through compression. Let's do a before and after of the vocals soloed.
So miserable it hurts. It's too much. My face is numb to the touch.
And let's throw all of our effects back on.
So miserable it hurts. It's too much. My face is numb to the touch.
What I'm noticing right off the bat is there's a lot more consistency, there's a lot more space, and there's a lot more depth. Let's open up one of these main vocal tracks, and I'll break down for you one by one what each effect is doing every step of the way. So let's disengage all of these so I can show you what's going down. First up, we have an EQ doing a high pass at 100 Hertz.
My face is numb to the touch. My face is numb to the touch.
Nothing fancy, just getting rid of some rumble and plosives. After that, we've got Gain Reduction by Joey Sturgis Tones. Now watch this gain reduction needle. Make note of how much it's moving.
My face is numb to the touch.
So we're only getting about 1.5, maybe 2 decibels of gain reduction on this thing. And the reason I'm using it is because it has a very fast attack and a very fast release, and my voice in particular has a lot of spikes. If we zoom in here, even through the outboard compression on the way in, there's a lot of these gritty spikes because my voice is very dynamic and unpredictable. So gain reduction is the perfect tool to kind of smooth out those transients that my voice produces when it shouldn't be producing transients. Now I'm following that up with the stock Reaper compressor, and again, it's the modern vocal preset. I've moved the threshold from -21 to -12. Aside from that, it's set up the exact same. Let's see how much work that compressor's doing.
My face is numb to the touch.
So again, we're only getting about 1 decibel of gain reduction on this compressor.
But Todd, why wouldn't you just hit the gain reduction plugin a little harder to get like 3 decibels of gain reduction?
Good question, inner monologue. The reason I didn't just hit the gain reduction plugin a little harder is because the Recomp has a different attack and release setting, which gives it its own unique character, and it's a character that I really like. So we're not hitting this compressor very hard, we're just getting a taste of its character. So here's where we start to get a little bit silly. Watch the attenuation meter on this limiter while I play this vocal.
So miserable it hurts.
So after we've tracked with about 12 decibels of gain reduction, then hit the gain reduction plugin for another 2, so we're at 14 decibels of gain reduction, then hitting Recomp for 1 or 2 more decibels of gain reduction, we're sitting at around 15 decibels in total from the time the scream has left my face until this limiter. All in, we're looking at about 20 decibels of gain reduction.
And we've just gotten started.
Let's do a before and after.
So miserable it hurts!
And after.
So miserable it hurts!
So what this has done is it has smoothed out some of the harshness in my voice. However, it sounds a little bit sterile, and I'll show you exactly why it's so sterile. I'm going to bounce it out so we can look visually at the waveform. It is completely bricked off. All of the dynamics have been stripped out of the vocal.
Okay, Todd, but if all the dynamics are gone, then why did you compress on the way in? Why didn't you start with a limiter?
Well, internal monologue, I wanted the limiter to control and soften the harshness from my voice, but I didn't want to overwork it. So the outboard compression that I used during tracking, as well as the gain reduction and recomp plugins, added their character and smoothed out my voice enough on their own so that by the time I'm hitting the limiter, I don't have to absolutely crush my vocal to get the consistency that I want. Now, this doesn't negate the fact that we just lost a lot of character and a lot of dynamics. So I follow up the limiter with the CLA 76. Let's listen to what it sounds like before.
So miserable it hurts!
And after.
So miserable it hurts!
And even though we've already limited the crap out of the vocal, we're still hitting this compressor pretty hard. We're getting about 6 decibels of gain reduction. And what this is accomplishing with this relatively slow attack, relatively fast release, is we're giving the consonants and transients back some of the punch that we lost during the limiting phase. What these 4 compressors in series have accomplished, these 2 have given the vocal some character and some punch. The limiter has added consistency and smoothness, which makes it easier to work with in the mix. And then we've added some attitude and spank with the CLA 76. Let's listen to this vocal again in context of the mix, before and after the compression.
My face is numb to the touch. I shake and I wince, we sleep and repeat. My face is numb to the touch. I shake and I wince, we sleep and repeat.
All right, now that's starting to sound like a song, but the vocal's a little dry. It can use some space. So I've put a delay after the compression. It sounds like this before,
My face is numb to the touch.
and like this with the delay.
My face is numb to the touch.
So I'm using the classic delay. It's a free plugin that you can get from KVR Audio. I'm using the analog setting. I'm doing a 6th note, which I believe is an 8th note triplet. And I've got the low cut and high cut both set as far as they will go, so that we're getting all mids in our delay sound, effectively using it as sort of a timed reverb, more so than an actual echo or delay. After that, another free plugin is Epic Verb. I'm running it on the plate setting with a relatively short time of 1,240 milliseconds. Let's hear what the delay and reverb are doing in context of the mix.
My face is numb to the touch. My face is numb to the touch.
Those 2 plugins do a great job of giving the vocal some context and space in the mix. Now I have the exact same chain on all 3 of these tracks. There is nothing different between them. And the reason that I have all of these compressors and spatial effects on each individual track and not up here on the screaming bus is because when I'm layering screams, I don't want, say, this high scream, for example,
I'm so sick.
to be influencing this low scream.
I'm so sick.
Or this mid scream.
I'm so sick.
I want them each to have their own individual punch, clarity, and character. So in technical terms, I don't want the dynamics of any given take to be influencing the way the compressors are interacting with the others. Now let's move on to the different buses. Over in the screaming bus, I've got re-EQ again. It's nothing too fancy going on. We've got a 1 decibel cut at about 4K, and that's just to tame the harshness and unpredictability of my scream. Here's a quick before and after so you can hear how subtle but ultimately important this little tweak was.
My face is numb to the touch. I shake and I wince, we sleep and repeat. My face is numb to the touch. I shake and I wince, we sleep and repeat.
Without that cut, The presence of my voice was very forward. My voice was very much at the front of the mix. It was in your face, which can be cool, and more often than not, you want that. But this is a pretty dense arrangement as it is, and I didn't want the vocal to be completely dominating the entire mix. I wanted the guitars to stand out too. So I used that 1 decibel cut just to give a little bit of attention away from the vocal and over to the guitars. Now this guy does something really cool. I'm going to show you what I use it for. I'm going to open up my automation lanes here and engage the plugin. Now if you look at the lane for the degradiator, it's down. It's at 0% all the way along. But then right at the end of the line, all 3 layers of this scream, they get further away and they sort of dissolve. So I'm going to show you what this plugin is doing here. I'm going to turn it off and play you the end of that section. Which is cool. We have, the slicey, dicey, chop and peel effect. But that wasn't enough for me. I want to go a little step further. So what I did, and I'll show you what it sounds like over the whole vocal.
I shake and I wince, weep, sleep and repeat. I'm so stuck.
I mangled the shit out of that vocal. I'm bit crushing it down to 11 bits instead of the 24 I recorded at. I'm downsampling it. I've got a telephone filter on it, and I'm crushing it as hard as it will go. So as this line fades out, it falls apart. Another automation trick that I use to enhance the feeling of the vocal being sucked back and dragged away is I automated the feedback from the delay on this mid scream so that by the time the section's ended, it's all the way up. What that did is it prolonged the echoes and made the voice sound further away than when it started.
Beat! I'm so stuck.
That tail at the end gives the vocal more space, isolation, and desolation, which is the feeling I was trying to get across with this part of the song. And after all of that, I have this vocals bus, which the screaming bus is bussed to, which, surprise, surprise, has a little bit more compression on it. But first things first, we've got a de-esser here, because after 20 to 30 decibels of gain reduction, you're going to run into some sibilance issues. So let's see how hard the Spitfish de-esser is working.
I shake and I wince, weep, sleep and repeat.
The sense knob here is essentially showing you how hard the de-esser is working.
I shake and I wince, weep, sleep and repeat.
So on the harshest S's, we're only looking about 4 to 5 decibels of gain reduction on the S's. In general though, our sibilant consonants are being attenuated by 1, maybe 2 decibels, just enough to take some of the edge off. Next, I have an EQ, which consists of a high pass, because all of the previous compression has brought up a lot of low-end energy. I've got a 1 decibel boost at about 350. That's just to give some body to my voice. And an interesting thing I did here, if you recall, on the screaming bus, I took a cut around 4K, 3.9. Then over here on the overall vocals bus, I've added some of that energy back at 3.4K, 2 decibels this time. And I did this because although the screams needed to be tamed a little bit in the upper mids, the vocals as a whole, in the context of the mix, when seen as part of the song rather than the vocal, it needed a little more presence. So I added that there. And here we are with more compression. Let's see how much that's working.
I shake and I wince, weep, sleep and repeat.
So we've got another 3 to 5 decibels of compression taking place. And the reason I have this compressor here is because towards the end of the song, there's this whole mess of layered vocals happening. So at the busiest parts of the song, there are 5 or more vocal parts happening at once. And again, referring back to this boost I made in the presence, The vocal is an instrument the same way that drums are an instrument. There's a snare, there's a kick, there's toms, there's overheads. But at the end of the chain, you need to realize that this is one instrument and that all the parts of that instrument need to be married together. And there's nothing quite like an LA2A to glue all the parts of a whole together. Here's the ending of the song without the bus compression. Without that compressor taming in the vocal family, it's really easy for things to get out of hand. So when we engage it, even though there's 4 or 5 layers of vocals happening between the melody, the harmonies, and then the screaming, the vocal isn't stepping all over the guitars and the cymbals. It's nice. I followed that compressor up with another high pass, because again, we've been adding compressor after compressor after compressor after compressor. There's a lot of low end energy being brought up, so I tamed that with a third gentle high pass. I've got a second delay with similar settings, this time using a quarter note instead of a 6th note. The reason I'm doubling the reverb is because I found that one instance of it alone was a little too thin. Once I added the second one, it thickened everything right up, and especially once you have those layers happening all over each other, having another reverb there after the bus compression really ties everything together. And once again, here's what we started off with.
So miserable it hurts! It's too much! My face is numb to the touch!
And here's what we earned after all of our processing.
So miserable it hurts! It's too much! My face is numb to the touch! So miserable it hurts!
Thank you so much for watching this video on how I stack a dick load of effects to achieve the sounds that I get. I hope that you learned something, and if you have any ideas on videos you would like to see me do, or concepts you'd like me to cover, just let me know in the comments down below. Don't be a stranger, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time when I cover my process for mixing clean vocals in hardcore music. Stay sloppy.